you can be successful in this or any math course. I'll discuss some ways of thinking and learning that can help you this semester as you take your math course, even if you haven't been successful in the past. This video will help you to complete all of the objectives listed. My hope for you is that you will use this new knowledge to increase your understanding and ability in this math class. Research has shown many good ways to be successful in a math class. In fact, there are so many possibilities that there is no way I'd have time to tell you about all of them. Instead, I'll focus on just a few of the ways. If you can work on trying these research-backed methods during this class, you should be more successful. Many of you likely feel that you're just not a good math student or don't have a math brain, or even worse, I'll never get this stuff, I'm not smart enough. Every time I hear something like that, I cringe because I don't believe it's true. I've always believed that everyone can learn math. It turns out there is research to back my belief. Carol Dweck, a Stanford University professor, has studied what's called a growth mindset for years. She's found that if you believe that your intellectual abilities can improve through your own efforts, you will do better in learning new or difficult things. And let me repeat that because it's so important. If you believe that your intellectual abilities can improve through your own efforts, you will do better in learning new or difficult things. If you have a fixed mindset, you believe that you're pretty much already as smart as you're going to be, so why make the effort to learn difficult things? Having a growth mindset helps students be more successful at math. Take a second and think of what your goals are for this class. In fact, if you're not sure, stop the video, think about them, even write them down, then come back. Okay, do you have one or more goals for this class in mind or written down? Does one of your goals have to do with what grade you'd like to achieve in the class? We all want to do well by whatever measure is used. In this case, it's grades. Dweck actually calls this type of goal a performance goal. Do you have any other goals for the class? Was one of your goals to increase your understanding of how to do math or get new knowledge to help you in future classes or your career? Dweck calls this type of goal a learning goal. And which type of goal, performance goals, which are centered around grades, or learning goals, which are centered around getting new knowledge, do you think results in the most brain growth? It turns out that learning goals will help you increase your ability to be more successful in math than performance goals. Why? Well, when you are focusing on just the outside measure of how well you're doing, the grade, you often hold back from taking a risk, such as trying a problem without first knowing what the procedure is, or sharing your thinking with others. This holding back may limit your potential in class. On the other hand, when you are focusing on learning new things and increasing your math ability, you are more willing to take risks. This risk-taking in class will sometimes result in not being right. These mistakes should be seen as an opportunity to learn why something doesn't work that will likely lead to learning why it does work. So if your goals don't currently include a learning goal, try to come up with one. You will often be working in groups during math class. Be willing to take the risk to share your thinking, whether that's just with your group or with another class. This is important even if you're not sure you're right. Joe Bowler, another researcher from Stanford, has found that when the brain is struggling to figure something out, new connections will grow in your brain whether you're right or wrong. There have been studies comparing successful and unsuccessful business people. The most successful people are those who have made the most mistakes. If you value making mistakes by looking at them as an opportunity to learn new things, you'll be on your way to developing a growth mindset and becoming more successful in this class. If you can respectfully question how others are working problems and have conversations about your strategies, you will learn more, especially if you are all willing to make mistakes. There are lots of things you can say or do. Here are some things to say. What strategies have you tried? Can you explain what you've done so far? Can you convince us that your answer makes sense? Even if someone has a hard time solving problems, praise them for their effort, not for being smart. Effort is part of developing a growth mindset, and being smart is a fixed mindset. Often, where I see many groups not succeeding is when some of the group members give up or are focused only on getting done, not necessarily on learning anything new. As a group member, you can and should be aware of these behaviors that may indicate someone is getting frustrated or not willing to try something new. Here are some things you can do to help a group mate who is stuck. Be willing to share a particular strategy or step of the problem. However, do not just share the answer or quickly run through the steps of the entire problem. It will not help the person find their own strategies that work for them. You could ask the person to explain what they might be thinking, even if they say they don't know how to get started. From there, you might hear something that you can discuss so the person can move forward with some confidence. Of course, there are many things to say or do to assist group mates. The focus, though, should be on the efforts and explanations rather than zipping through the work without too much thinking. Henry Roediger and Mark McDaniel are scientists who wrote a book with Peter Brown about successful learning. One of the main strategies that they recommend is called retrieval practice. What this means is finding ways to test yourself on your knowledge and understanding. Their studies have shown that those who are tested over material will learn the material better. Here are a few of the ways that I have seen that have been effective in math classes. If there are vocabulary words or basic math facts to memorize, which could be anything from formulas to the unit circle, flashcards are a great way. Do not look at the answer until you've attempted it. One of the best retrieval methods in math class is to take problems that you have done or that are similar to what you have done and cover the solution and try it yourself. Only after you try it do you look at how it was done. These problems can come from homework, classwork, old quizzes, online, wherever you can get problems and answers. Another important time to do retrieval practice is when studying for a test. I will often give out some type of test review. Try all of these problems first without looking at your text or notes. Check your answers afterwards and correct mistakes. Try the test review again until you can complete all the problems correctly without any outside resources. Another strategy that Brown, Roediger, and McDaniel recommend is to practice new learning over time rather than all at once. You can probably remember a time when you waited until the last minute to study for a test. You crammed in as much knowledge as possible in order to be able to dump it out on the test and then forget it. If you have a learning goal, to be able to use this information later during the class or in your career, you should definitely spread out the times you spend studying or practicing math. Rather than studying the night before the test for 5 hours, you would be much better off studying for a half hour a day for 10 days in a row. This will result in better understanding and retention. The final type of activity that leads to the best learning is to interleave types of practice. This means that don't practice all of one type of problem at once. Vary the types of problems you are practicing so that you will not only learn how to do each problem, but you will also learn to recognize when to do each problem. An example that maybe you've seen at some point in your math career is when you learn to solve quadratic equations. Remember, a quadratic equation have that x squared term in them, something like x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. So you first learn to factor and then solve the equations. Then you learn to complete the square and then solve the equations. And finally, you learn the quadratic formula and then solve the equation. Because you learned these things separately, you probably just used the last thing you learned, the quadratic formula, to solve each. If you had interleaved your practice or mixed it up with all three of these methods, you would know when each way to solve the quadratic equation was easiest and be able to use it rather than just being stuck in one way that's sometimes very inefficient. So I recommend as you're studying or doing homework to try not to do all the same types of problems in a row. Mix up the order so that you really have to think about how to best solve the problems. If developing learning goals, a growth mindset, using retrieval practice, spacing out and interleaving your practice all sound more difficult than just rereading your notes the night before an exam, guess what? You're right. They are more difficult and will require more effort for you. However, the research on being successful clearly indicates that each of these methods will help you to become more successful in this class and learn much more than otherwise. I urge you to try to make these techniques that I discussed in the video a habit, not just for this class, but in all of your classes. You will be pleased at the results if you stick with it.